it's not hands-on training. And actually, some of the courses that, and I'm not very sure how the Indian education system is structured now. I finished with school in 2005, right? But I always struggled with thinking that how is what I'm learning now going to prepare me for the future? And now when I look back, I'm convinced that it didn't. So I think what's really important, what really prepared me for the future was actually more, my background, where I was constantly uprooted from one city to another, one school to another, where I had to actually adapt very quickly to a new environment, right? And life lessons are actually what prepare you for the future than what our Indian education system was able to give us at that time actually. So I think now what's very important is that the ability for students to be more hands-on, right? To get into more vocational subjects, right? So while there are the core subjects that you have to learn, but I think it's also important to do a little bit of vocational subjects. Right? It could be something as simple as home science, right? It's not common, and people still feel that hey, it's meant for the girls, but it's actually not. So I had the opportunity to study in Japan, and what they used to do was they used to actually allow students to sign up for different vocational classes, and there was one which was building houses. And what they used to do was students who were part of that who were part of that class were actually then sent on humanitarian missions, because the Philippines used to always get ravaged by typhoons. We used to go for 3 weeks, help build houses in the Philippines, actually throw them in at point zero of a disaster, allow them to build, and also understand the amount of devastation and what people are going through, right? And the learning that it would bring back was huge, which no subject is going to teach you. So I feel like these life skills are very important to prepare you for the future. Does that answer the question, or
yeah, it did.
were you
It did.
looking for something more?
I really understood, that life skills are something that will travel along with you throughout your life. I mean, I think no matter, which school you are pursuing or sir, what degree you are pursuing, life skills is something that is pretty much, is required. Now, see, if at all you see the composition of the audience today, there are a lot of students, either in the school or college, they are busy with their academics, or they're busy with some of the courses like say entrepreneurship, or say take robotics, or take coding or anything like that. One thing that everyone asks me, whenever I interact with them, one thing that their parents ask me is, see, they have got amazing idea, but they do not know how to present, or they have got amazing coding skills, but they're not able to present their app to anyone else. So this is one common thing that is there, and you already addressed about Indian education system. So to at least to gain that, presentation skills, or say to gain that, business pitching skills, what do you suggest to the students? I mean, do they have to follow any videos? How would you come across that? I mean, at least you have that vocational courses, you have signed up with that. But currently, if at all you see with our Indian education system, we do not have much time. I mean, the students are busy from morning till evening, or they're busy with their sports, or they're busy with some extracurricular activities like entrepreneurship. Unless it is very much important, they're not. We do not have time to enroll for vocational courses. I'm talking about 60% of the schools or 70% of the schools. Their timetable does not permit for that. Given the NEET exams, given this IIT exams or IEEE exams, the students do not have much time. So what is one thing that you suggest the students to improve upon their presentation skills?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I think a lot of people get bogged down with the idea of having to be charismatic and speaking really great English to be able to present well. That's not true, right? To be able to really pitch, right? if someone is pitching to me, or say someone, a leader somewhere, or a VC, or what are they looking for? They are looking for confidence that this person has thought through what they are trying to do, right? So the answer to your question is that you must have the depth, right, of what you're pitching. So, which means that you have to really think through uh, a problem, right, and go deep into what can, or what are the could be, and try and answer all of them, right? So how do I simplify this, right? I want to structure this in a simpler way. Is that if I have an idea, right, I have to think about every single manifestation of that idea, right? Every single possibility of what that idea could lead to, every single failure point, and address that. So I have to really, simplify the problem and break it down, right? And that gives because I'll tell you, in any business, so if you see, whenever a business fails, or whenever an idea fails, it's because there was some amount of detailing that was missed, right? So God does lie in the details. And when someone thinks about something, you have to think about every single detail. So the advice here is that don't forget about how fluent you're with English, or the language that you're going to pitch in, or about your personality, or how charismatic you are, or about what impression the person is going to have who you're pitching to, because that person is interested in your idea. That person is interested in the depth that you have on the subject. That person needs the confidence that you are a subject matter expert, right? That's all it takes. So when you think about something, you have to go really, really deep into it, and think about every possibility that can manifest from it.
Great. I think depth and also confidence really matters here. Not how fluently you're speaking in English, or how fancy words you're using to present. I think that is one very interesting insight. So students, most of them, when they present also, they lack in confidence. They lack on confidence because either they think that uh, they lack in the skills, or they lack in the fluency, or something like that. Please work on this presentation skills. And okay, when starting from the scratch, when you are trying to start your own organization, or building a function, or even organization bottom up, what are the considerations one needs to build a good team? To have your own teammates, or especially when you are starting your urban club, I think you must have started with single digit number, and now I'm sure you must be having very good team members. So how did you
Yeah.
choose a team, and what has happened since the scratch? How did you build your team? What all things that you see?
Yeah. So this is a very humbling moment, right? Because here you have to go and think about what is it that you are lacking. What is the skill set or competency that you are lacking, right? So you have to have a very objective outlook, and say that, hey, this is exactly what I'm lacking, and I have to bring in a person who can bring in that particular competency, right? So I'll give you my own example. I remember when Abhiraj called me, and said, hey, I think you should consider joining Urban Clap. And I said, why? Like, what will I do there? And what he told me was very simple. He said, look, we are looking to build out the customer experience function. The people who are with me right now, and there were about 4 other people, were all engineers, right? They were hardcore, they were all software guys, working on very core tech guys, and they had one guy who was working on BD. And he said that they're all engineers, but I want someone who has a customer centric background, and not customer centric from the point of view where you can build a great product, right? but someone who thinks about customers and customers' emotions and what customers feel. Because right now nobody in the team can think about that. So I understood this point, but I also realized that it required for him to think about what he and his team at that moment did not have. So you have to be very honest with yourself and say, hey, right now, I'm good at this, and I'm not good at these particular skills or competencies. So I need to ensure that I bring in people who can complement that, right? Which could also mean that you may end up bringing in people who are smarter than you, who are better than you, which is fine. At the end of the day, it's the team that succeeds.
All right, all right. So Suhail, I mean, one thing again, I have, because most of the students again here are going to start young, and the average team, the age of the team could be around say 25 to 30, and if one who is going to start at the age of 18, 19, how does it going to be? I mean, like, there could be a lot of challenges. Say, for example, I am 25 years of age, and when I reach out to the principals or when I reach out to others, people might not take me seriously. I mean, this is one common question that I keep getting in a lot of our sessions. Sir, we are going to start our own venture, but do people take us seriously? Because considering age as one thing, or considering our experience, we might be having our idea, or we might be having passion to implement it, or we might be getting funds and all. But when we are trying to run a team of age, who are at least 10 years or 15 years elder to us, do they take seriously? Do that kind of teams, do you think they are going to cope up well?
That's actually a great question. So I'll answer the question in two parts. As an entrepreneur, if you're a young entrepreneur, how are you going to convince people about your idea? How are you going to bring people who might be older than you and smarter than you on board? It again comes back to the first point I was making, which was how deeply have you thought about what you want to do, right, and what you want to achieve. And as long as you are wedded to the objective of your organization, and you are able to give them the confidence that you know what you want to achieve, you might not know how, but you know what you want to achieve, is good enough, right? Because so we have examples of Ritesh Agarwal. He's a great example. He started off very, very young. He was in his early 20s. The founders of Urban Clap also are Abhiraj and Varun are both 33. So when they started off, they were 26, right? So they were also pretty young, right? And so it's fine. I don't think age matters. What matters is the confidence that you can give to people who are going to join you. And of course, when you're pitching, don't feel that you're going to be given a check of $1 million in the first pitch you make. That's not going to happen, but it will eventually happen as long as you can give people the confidence that you have a great idea, and that you're wedded to the objective.
Yes. Okay. All right. I think
right? Now to answer the second part is, how do you bring in people and work with people who are older and more experienced with you? That's actually an interesting one, because here people tend to think that, is this person going to override me or going to is likely to sort of undermine what I'm trying to say, because this person might be better at what he does than I am. Actually, as long as this person or your team member who you brought in, as long as he gets the respect from you, it's fine, right? So if you go in, on the first day and say that, I'm not so sure if this person is going to respect me because I'm young, then you've hired wrong. You've obviously not evaluated well in the interview, right? But if it happens at some point during the journey, it's very important to have that conversation. And it's very, very important to give these people the respect that they deserve, right? Because at the end of the day, they're going to build your company.
Correct. So yeah. So again, again, in urban company, what is the common hiring process that you have? I mean, do you consider the schooling as one of the aspects, or say, do you consider the extracurricular activities that there and say I've heard from most of the parents here again, I'm going to join my kids in robotics, I'm not going to join my kids in coding classes, so that after 10 years when they are going to attend any interviews, this will definitely build their profile. So I mean, what is that? Is it a fact or is it a myth that all their schooling certifications will definitely help them down the line 10 years, because the skills are changing, and now you might be looking for people with certain skills, but
Yeah.
you know what is your take on that?
Okay. So again, a very interesting question. Um, Coming back to what I said in the beginning, I think, of course, a good education is important, right? There's a lot you learn in school, but let's also be very transparent in saying that not everyone in our country has the privilege of getting a good education, right? Yet there are people who do very well. Now, for us, when we hire, and now that I head talent acquisition, I think what sort of is what pivots a candidate in our favor is are actually the life lessons he's had, right? And we do spend a lot of time in during the hiring process, especially at leadership levels, in understanding what are the kind of hiring, life lessons people have got. And one of the top life lessons that we really look for, or we go deep into, is to understand the failures people have had in life, right? One is because failures are a great teacher, in my opinion, the best teacher, right? When you fail, the amount you learn from a failure is incredible, right? And how you use that learning post that is also very important. So that's one thing, right? And also, from a very personal perspective about how people have managed their lives beyond just education, whether it's sports, whether it's extracurricular activities. Yes, those do matter because they're a great teacher as well. So yes, education is more important, courses are important, but I'd say things like sports, NCC, right? Exchange programs, or even just the fact that you've gone and worked in a farm in France for a couple of weeks, or even in India for a couple of weeks. The fact that you've done these things, that you've taken these risk-taking appetite, right, is very important in a startup. So you look for that in candidates.
Yes, very, very interesting insight here. Risk-taking appetite and failures. I think this is where I was getting at for the next question. Again, talking about the failures here, but here, we have our own school called Metamorphosis School. It's a virtual school. So we introduce entrepreneurship as a curriculum, and in that school, we have a selection criteria, and in the interviews when we ask about failures, the students would say that, yes, I have failed in my class test on the other day. I have failed in that competition. I failed in my robotics competition. So can you throw some more light on, what type of failures that you see that, or that you consider that, yes, they have a good risk-taking appetite? All right. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So I don't know how relevant this would be to the audience that we're speaking to, but it's during the course of your professional life, right, or the early 20s at least,
Yes.
or even when you get out of school, it could be just going to the wrong college, right? You feel that you're going to the right institute, but you end up going to the wrong city, right? And that's where there are things that happen. You're outside your home for the first time. It could be something as basic as getting into bad company and losing a year in college, right? That's a big failure that of course in India, there is a stigma attached to it. Hey, you've lost a year, but it happens, right? And people learn from it. So that's at a more sort of relatable stage. But even once you move into your working profession, what happens is that there are people who take up the first job that they get, right? Because hey, this is the first thing that's thrown at me. Of course, when you're in your early 20s, it's all about, hey, let me just quickly start working because this is what I've looked forward to all my life. And you realize that you're doing something that you really don't like to do. You have no interest in doing. But yet you've done it for like 2 years and you haven't achieved much out of it. Losing your job as well is a failure, right? But now I want to spend a little time on that because there are times when we've also asked people to leave, and it's not because they don't want to do their job. Remember, no one comes to work saying that, hey, I'm not going to work anymore. It's always the system, right? So it could be the culture of the company. It could be the wrong fit. Now, often what happens is that there are people who are the wrong fit for the company, but it also happens that the company is the wrong fit for that person, right? So people do lose their jobs, and it's more common than we think. And that's a great learning for anyone, right? Because you have to introspect and think about why did you lose your job, right? Or it could be as simple as I've been in this organization for long enough, but I've not seen any growth, right? Again, you have to ask yourself the question that have I failed at getting the right job for myself, right? Am I doing what I should be doing? Or am I doing it because I'm under pressure to do it, right? Now, we live in India. There's, a lot of kids end up doing something because they are under pressure to do it, right? There are so many people who want to become artists, who want to become sports persons, but any kid who goes and tells his father that, hey, I want to become a soccer player, is going to get a smack on his face, right? In all likelihood, right? Because any middle class parents expect their children to get a good education and then get a good job. It's the natural progression in life in a middle class family. So imagine going and telling your father, I actually want to become a sports star or a soccer star. It's unlikely to happen. There are some kids who are able to do it. There are some kids who are able to convince their parents and actually work on that for 2 or 3 years and then realize that, hey, you know what, I'm not good enough, and then back out. That can be considered a failure, but that teaches you a lot.
Correct. Agreed, Suhail. So, but do you see the trend is changing now? People are now more transparent while they want to propose something to their parents that they want to pursue this, they want to pursue that. Do you see the trend that is changing, or the kind of people that are coming to your organization with different exposure? Say, taking you as an example, you have done hotel management, and now you have handled operations, you have handled branding, you are doing HR. So do you see that trend changing now? Maybe soon I think we are going to see people who are aspiring to become a doctor might join a media company, because the skills that are changing you, because the outside experiential skills are much more dominating than their academic skills, is what I feel. So do you agree with that? What's your take on that?
So within urban company, the people who work with urban company, no, absolutely not. I think 95% upwards are engineers. But I do want to talk about urban company partners, right? Now, for the longest time, we ran, right? But now, of course, the model has changed. We are very fixed on on-demand services. So we have a salon service, we have our home repair service. But for a very long time, we actually had a long tail lead gen business model where we had people like makeup artists, we had people like, we had wedding photographers, we had architects, we had music teachers, right? And actually, in the beginning, of course, we spent a lot of time talking to these people. And these guys were great examples of, folks who went against the grain. So, it's amazing how much money a good wedding photographer can make. A wedding, a decent, I won't even say the best wedding photographer, decent wedding photographer can make upwards of 3-4 lakhs in one wedding, right? So in a year, they can easily make about 50-60 lakhs, right? But imagine going and telling your parents that, oh, I want to become a wedding photographer. That's my ambition. It's hard. It's hard. It's really hard. And honestly, the money in photography is not that much, except in weddings. So all these people who were wedding photographers didn't actually their ambition was not to become a wedding photographer. The ambition was to become a photographer, a good photographer. But the business part of what they do, which is wedding photography, is what is funding their ambition. Similarly with bridal makeup artists, right? You don't go to school with the ambition that, hey, I want to grow up to be a bridal makeup artist. It's an art, and it's a passion you develop over a couple of years. And there is a lot of money in it, right? So we had this guitar tutor who used to moonlight as a guitar trainer, but he was actually a dentist. Right? So I've seen great examples of such people who've taken the risk and gone against the grain and actually sort of lived their passion and delivered on it in our professional ecosystem.
Okay. All right. So I think very interesting factor here. So Suhail, overall, so how big is your team currently, and what do you do to keep them motivated on a day-to-day basis at that one company? Because because I run an organization, I know on a day-to-day basis, we need to make our team to be motivated. Or it's so tough to keep everyone on the same plate and driving them towards the vision. So how big is your team, and how do you drive your team, and how do you keep them motivated?
Yeah, thankfully I have a small team now. Till last year I had a team of 600. That was hard, right? But there are two aspects to it. I think it's relevant to discuss about the situation we're in now, right? So while you're in the office, it's so much easier because there's so much FaceTime. You're meeting people regularly. A lot of people make friends at work. They're seeing them regularly. So there is that amount of motivation that comes in. And there's just the FaceTime that people get with their managers and other people in the team, right? But in the current situation, it's actually a lot harder. Because what happens is that all the conversations that happen are around work, right? Because you set up a call, you discuss business, and then you move on. So those casual conversations are not happening anymore. Plus, what's happening is that when people are not talking to other people from the team, they are not aware of what else is going on in the organization, right? Yes. And for us, the organization that's so large, we are now 1,300 people, and we've got over 15 functions. Business not being aware of what engineering is doing these days, or not being so aware of what finance is doing, and vice versa. What happens is that sense of belonging starts to erode. And it's very important to ensure that doesn't happen, right? But it's also very, very hard. So what are we doing right now? We're actually doing a lot. And this is, firstly, what we do is we collect a lot of data, right? On people, on the mood, what are their insecurities at the moment? What are they most worried about? What are they least worried about? So that you're addressing the right problem. Right. So just before the lockdown lifted, we got to know that the top problem in the organization for employees was actually commuting to work. So they were thinking about this, right? How am I going to get to work? And that was the top problem. It was not job security. It was not their salary. It was not remote working, but it was just how do I get to work once the lockdown lifts, right? And right now the top problem is that um, just I'm not aware of what the objectives are, right? I don't have enough clarity on expectations. So I think what's important is that every single person in the organization is aligned to what the objective of the organization is, right? So it's important for the leaders of the organization to say, hey, this is what we did last month, and this is what we're going to be doing next month, in the coming month. And these are the top organizational goals, and this is how we're going to achieve them. So everyone is now aligned to what the top organizational goals are. And then it's also important to get people to talk about the work that they're doing, right? So what we're starting with is we're getting teams to come every week and present on one project that they worked on. So two things happen. One is that people are getting to talk about their work. Second, it's creating more awareness of what is going on in the organization at a slightly deeper level, right? This also builds appreciation for the work people are doing. You know, when you're in the office, you're constantly like talking, you're appreciating, hey, great job done here, great job done there. But when you're remote, it becomes harder. So you have to be a little more conscious about appreciating the work people are doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
I think
In a nutshell, if I have to sort of say what needs to be done is, one is there needs to be a lot of communication. Everyone needs to align with the top objectives of the organization, and awareness of what people are working on needs to be built.
interesting. So I think the same goes to the schools also. You know, there are a lot of principals watching this live session now. Even for them, you know, this is a completely new thing. At least, you know, you at Urban Company, you guys are, you know, earlier into technology. You know, you are used to these calls. But the schools, you know, for the past 3 months, you know, when they have completely digitalized their learnings to through this Zoom or through any other platforms, you know, again, one common query that we have got from the principals. In fact, I have got few requests from the principals to ask you this question on about this digital learning. You know, how do they ensure that the teachers are equally motivated and the students are also equally motivated, because the attention span of the student is pretty low, at least in the class. You know, in the offline, you know, it used to be a little easier. You know, at least if for 40 minutes class, you know, 15 minutes they would revise, 20 minutes they would get into the concept. Last 10 minutes, you know, again they would have nice, you know, interactive sessions. But now, like you mentioned, for 40-minute class, the entire 40 minutes the teacher has to deliver the session, and the student will have to have that attention span continuously throughout the day. So I think if at all you can suggest few things to the principals, that's like you said, you know, if at all we can appreciate all the teachers, or if at all we can appreciate the students for what they're doing. Likewise, if there are any suggestions that you can give to some of the principals to motivate their team during this digital transformation, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, it's an interesting topic, because what happens is that digital takes away the emotion, right, from an interaction. So the theory here is, why not bring back the emotion into the interaction when it's digital, right? So, you know, at work, what would happen is that you would be talking to a colleague, you enter a meeting, it doesn't start, you don't enter and say, okay, come on, let's start, right? It's always a little bit of chit chat, how you're doing, you know, someone's having a problem, you discuss it. Why not bring that back into a meeting, right? So I understand it's a little harder to do when you're working with students, because there is that, I mean, with students, it's a little more formal, and you also need to, you know, have some amount of control on the students. But also for principals who are working with teachers, and of course your interactions are also very important with them. It's important to bring back that emotion into those interactions. So I think it's always nice to maybe spend the first 10-15 minutes um, asking people how they're doing. Maybe pick up a topic which is completely off, which is completely unrelated and discuss it. It could be current affairs, etc. But that chit chat needs to be brought back in, right? Because the truth is that this is the new normal, right? So we were actually having an interaction, a leadership interaction yesterday, and we said that we need to think about, or we need to at least plan our strategy, considering the fact that it is possible that we will be working remotely for the next 12 months, right? Um, because we don't know how the pandemic is going to play out. So it's not going to stop tomorrow. We're not going to get back to offices tomorrow. Students are not going to come back to school tomorrow. It's not even going to happen for the next 2 or 3 months. So I think with that consideration, it is important to realize that this is the new normal, and this is not a stopgap arrangement. And hence, whatever has been missing needs to be brought back, right? So those interactions need to be brought back. The games need to be brought back. A couple of weeks ago, we launched this game for all the teams in UC, and it was a war of memes. Basically, every team was divided, and they were pitted against each other, and we had rounds, elimination rounds. And for the first time during the pandemic, the entire organization came together, and for 3.5 hours we were on our the tool that we use called Slack. But it was great, right? And it brought the fun back into work and just the organization. And these are very hard to do because there's a lot of logistics that goes into it. But someone has to think about it and do it, right? So the fun has to be brought back into work. And people have to get creative about it, but it's very important to think about it. Otherwise, what's happening is that people are getting jaded, people are getting depressed. Working remotely it's not the preferred mode of work, right? So you have to think about bringing back the fun into it.
Interesting. Okay, we will take few questions from the audience now. I think already there are few questions popping up. There is a question from our student, Sadhana Sriram. She asked, failures are really important, but for example, I'm a ninth grader. I really don't get depressed or really worry if I don't get something or if I'm not able to win something. Though I am pretty good at my studies and my co-curricular activities, I don't mind failing during a sprint or getting below 90 in my exam. Do you think it is important to be so in business? Is it really important to get depressed during your failure?
That's a very cute question, actually. And the reason I'm saying that is because getting below 90 is not a failure. And actually, I'd be worried if people consider getting below 90 a failure, right? Failures are actually more than that. Failures are, realizing that you spent 3 years of your life doing something that doesn't work out for you, right? Failures are, losing a whole year of your school life or your college life. Failures are big, and they make an impact on your life and the beliefs that you've had so far. But it doesn't mean that you need to get depressed after a failure, right? Just because you're not depressed, does it mean that you haven't failed? No, not true. What you need to do is, when you realize something big has happened, right? When it's been a large scale failure, what you need to really do is think about how are you going to utilize that, right? How are you going to utilize that that failure? And I'm a big believer in the concept that adversity creates opportunity, because what happens is that when you fail at something, you then start thinking about how can I do this better, right? The pandemic that we're in right now is is an adversity, right? Now everyone has to get creative about how to run their business, right? There are so many businesses that have shut down. I spent so many years in the hotels, and hotels are empty right now, right? But their costs, they're still paying for their electricity, they're still paying salaries. So those are failures at that scale. And if you're not able to handle it, then that's the problem. But really, to answer your question, I don't think getting below 90 is a failure. Um, and if you do get below 90, then yes, please do not get depressed about it. You're in the ninth grade. It's likely that you won't see failure for some time, right? Um, in the 12th, or when you sort of give a competitive exam and you don't clear it, that is a failure of sorts, right? And failure is something that you always look back on and see that, hey, this affected me very deeply at this point. Um, but I used that opportunity and I course corrected. So if you don't get into a college of your choice, you always need to have a backup plan and think about what next. What if A doesn't work out? Then what is my plan B, right? And then you think about, okay, A didn't work out. Why didn't it work out? And use those learnings to ensure that you don't fail in the future again.
And I think what she asked was, is it? I mean, do you think it is important to be so in business? I mean, say what she's saying is, she did not. Yeah, I think she got the answer. All right. So we have another question from Pragyam Soni. Pragyam has asked, "Sir, being a startup, how can we convince the employees that this is the company in which we want or to serve? How can we convince the employees that this is the company that they have to serve for them?"
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and I'll tell you why. Because when you start up, you have no capital, right? You are generally, spending on some little capital that you would have raised from friends and family, um, and then you're basically trying to attract talent that is probably better than you, right? Or at least they have a competency that you don't have, that you need to fill, right? So the question is that how do you attract talent while also telling them that, hey, I don't have the money to pay you as much as you would like to be paid. Um, and it's interesting because um, you're just like, this is such a hard problem. But the point is that it's it's the objective that you have, right? You are building on what your dream is, and you have to get people to believe in the dream or the objective that you have. Um, and while this may sound like it may sound so ideological, but it's true. If you can convince a person about your dream and what you're trying to do and get them on board, first, it's possible to do it. Second is that, hey, this person is then committed. I'll give you my own example. I moved from a company like ITC, right, to Urban Club, which was, I was the ninth person to join. They had not raised any funding, right? I joined at a pay cut, but I did it because I believed in the person who was running the company, right? I believed in what they were going to achieve, um, right? And my outlook was that even if this doesn't work out, the experience I will gain of having been a part of this is experience I will never get in my life, right? And again, it could have failed. So for me, it was that, hey, if this fails, fine. I will also have the experience of having worked at a failed startup, right? But we all joined to ensure that an objective is successful. So far we've managed that, but I can only say so far.
Yes. So let us talk about letting go of people. Especially firing is one of the things that is so tough decision that people has
Yeah.
to take. So, and also, we talked about, handling failures at the school level also, letting go of few things is so tough. So what is your take on that? I mean, especially when you are planning to let go of few people, especially during pandemic, 90% of the startups has done that. So how tough was it for you, or say, what are things that we need to consider so that they're also getting that empathy towards the organization?
Yeah. So Pawan, luckily for us, we didn't have to let go of people, right? Um, we had some amount of cash in the bank, and what we did was we actually cut down on costs before we could cut down on headcount. So we never got to that position. But um the question is, so I won't focus on the pandemic. I'll focus on overall, right? Because companies don't just let go of people during adversities like a pandemic. So this actually, you know, points in the direction of how companies hire, right? And I strongly believe that companies have to really push the teams that they have and only hire when necessary, and always have a point, sorry, you know, a pulse on what every single person is doing, because it's very, very easy to become a bloated company, have a bloated headcount, right? Um, so it's always important to look at headcount and what people are doing. Um, the second is that, and schools do this really well, is believe in the system of meritocracy, right? So you have to objectify performance of people, and every now and then you have to uh, purge your bottom performers. So that ensures that one is you are creating a you know, a culture of meritocracy, right? You are rewarding people who are doing well, and you're letting go of people who are not doing well. Um, right, and this comes back to the point that I had spoken about earlier, that anyone who's not doing well is probably stuck in the wrong organization, right? um, so there are times when you're also doing them a favor, but you have to think about the organization. This is important, you know, just ensuring that you're always removing the bottom performers is important, because you don't then get into a situation where suddenly you're like, hey, um, I have like 200 people who are not doing well, not adding value, and now I have to let them go, right? Because what happens is that bad employees can spread negativity very quickly in a company, right? And this can spread very, very quickly, like wildfire. So if you have an idea that someone is not doing well, or someone has an intent issue, um, you must let them go. So you should not even do it like every 6 months. You should, the moment you recognize the signs or you see the signs, that's when you should have a very clear chat with this person, set them up, you know, put them up on a performance improvement plan, and if it doesn't work out, then um, you must get them to move on. And then you don't get caught in this whole thing that, you know, I've let go on so many people and now I have to pay so many months of severance, etc. Right? You're just ensuring that your system is always healthy.
We have a question from Shivam Bansal. He asked, "Sir, risk is important or not? When we do risky, then we have many type of fears. Then how can we overcome from that type of fears? Okay, when you are taking
Yeah.
risk in
So
the fears."
the risk is always fear is always the fear of failure, and that's really what people should do away with, because failing is good. Failing, you know, you're young. This is the time where, see, you can't take risks when you're at the age and stage of your parents, right? Rarely have you seen people become entrepreneurs when they're in their 40s. So risk you have to take right now, right? Use, I mean, you should go into something thinking that it's going to work out, but if it doesn't, then at least I'm going to get a great learning out of it, right? So the silver lining in failure is always learning, and one must never fear failure.
I think we are getting few more questions on Facebook as well. I'll just quickly put few more questions. So
So
we have a question from Srinivas Mantha. He has asked, do organizations develop empathy towards employees in the long stay?
yes, and I think that's the the biggest difference between a good organization and a bad organization, right? I mean, there are no bad organizations, but there is this word called culture, which is thrown around very loosely, right? Um, Culture, good culture is always the foundation of good culture is empathy, right? And it's not about the CEO. It's about what every people manager down the line, um, the way they feel about their team members. Um, and that's why two-way feedback is very important. So one of the things that we do in UC is that one of the very key indices for a manager's performance review is something called upward feedback. So we collect and we score all people managers based on the feedback their team members are giving or the people who report into them are giving, right? And their rating is there is it is one of the components of their rating. So it's very important because when you see managers who don't have those people skills, they also need to be coached to develop them. And if an organization doesn't have empathetic managers, if they're transactional and they're heavy-handed and it's a top-down approach when dealing with people, um, that organization is likely to see some challenges.
All right. So we have a question from Bhuvan from on Facebook. He asked,
Sorry, just give me
yeah,
1 minute. Huh? Just give me 1 minute.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Bhuvan is asking, a good team requires a good leader, right? So how shall a entrepreneur add in the values of leadership in him or her?
Okay. Interesting question. So there are two things that you look for in a leader, right? One is that you want to see capability. You want to know that your leader is competent. Um, but what really makes a successful leader is actually his ability to empathize and his EQ. So emotional quotient over intelligence quotient is always a winner. But you also have to see that you'll also notice that a good leader is not too emotional. He's able to objectify situations every now and then, right? Like he's able to sort of understand the gravity of a certain situation, um, and take a very judicious call. Um, so to answer your question in a nutshell, I'd say what you really need to look for in a leader is emotional quotient. Um, and he can't be too emotional. But of course, there is also, I mean, you have to know that he's capable and intelligent. But that always comes. If he's at the leadership position, it's in all likelihood he has the IQ. But for him to be a good leader, he needs to have the EQ as well.
Interesting. So emotional quotient. So today we have learned so many things. We talked about risk taking. We talked about handling the failure. We talked about emotional quotient. We have talked about the leadership qualities or the leadership skills. And one last question I wanted to ask on behalf of the aspiring entrepreneurs. There are few corporates also joined the session where they wanted to start their startup. So again, just like how we started with hiring the right team, I wanted to ask one last question again on the team. So when you have
Yeah.
worked in corporate, you have so many things to do. To come outside or to step outside the organization and to start your own venture, it's going to be so tough. So, what is your message to all people, who are planning to step outside from their comfort life and coming out? How do they find right set of team? And, what are things that they need to ensure that they're again falling behind the race that is happening now?
don't do it. No, I'm joking. I'm saying that because I have not done it, and I don't think I can do it. But I've seen people who've done it. Um, it just requires a lot of determination, right? It requires a lot of determination. You're not. I mean, it's highly likely that you're not going to get it right the first time. It's also very likely you're not going to get it right the second time, right? So it needs a lot of determination. It needs a lot of tenacity. You just have to keep at it. You have to keep doing it, 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 right? And be able to sort of understand that the results are going to be more long term than short term, right? So, you know, Pavan, I'm sorry, but I'm not the right person to ask this question because I have not done it. But I have seen people up close who've done it, and these are two things I've seen, right? That they're 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 wired differently, right? They're not scared of failure. They're not scared of judgment. Um, they're willing to say and do things which are needed, but may not seem right to the general audience. And the general audience will always question that, hey, why are they saying this, or why are they doing this? Why are they sort of why don't they give up when they see something is failing? But it's just that, right? The only thing I'd say that segregates an entrepreneur from one who's not is just the ability to not give up, come what may be the situation.
So one last question again from Sadhana. So Sadhana says, sir, companies have started to lay off their long-term employees and are hiring people for a short period of time. So do you think that it's going to affect the company in a long term? They wouldn't have many people to hire later.
Yeah. Yeah, this is happening. Unfortunately, Sadhana, the pandemic is not a normal situation, right? So no company wants to let go of good people, good loyal people, right? Um, and actually, I'm going to take the example of Uber. Uber did it because they just didn't have a choice. People who were not riding across the world, right? They didn't have the money to, and they had to let go of people who had spent many years with them. But it's also about the way they did it. And I don't know if you all were able to see on LinkedIn the way people wrote about Uber when they'd been let off. They just had the best things to say. So it's not just about um, being let gone off, having been there for that long. It's also about how it was done. And if these people get an opportunity to go back to Uber, I'm 100% sure they will. They definitely will, right? It's about how the company treated them, about the respect they were given. And also people realize that, hey, look, at the end of the day, if the company can't afford to pay me, then I can't be there.
Yes. So I think these are the questions. So guys, if there are any questions, please write to us. We will pass it on to Suhail. And if at all he's getting some time, definitely she'll answer those questions. Once again, Suhail, thank you so much for joining our webisode. And I'm sure this is very much insightful. And we have learned a lot today, especially on the team management. And you can already can see the kind of feedback that we're getting. Thank you so much, Suhail. Thank you so much for taking your time out and on a Saturday evening joining us. And I think this is one of the best sessions that we have hosted so far. And this is one of the new topics. We have never touched upon these topics. And definitely, so guys, who got disconnected in between, we are going to share the recorded session of today's episode. And once again, thank you so much, Suhail, for joining the session. And anyways, we will have so much to talk. We really wanted to know more about Urban Company, your hiring techniques and all. We really wanted to take one case study and present it to the students as well. which we have already done. And the students are anyways, last year they talked about urban company. And whenever I ask about interesting startups to research, they are going to, most of our students, they come up with urban company as one of the companies. They whatever they find it on Google, they present it in the classes also. And we are very much privileged to have you today in our episode session.
Thanks, Pawan. Always happy to talk about what we're doing, and I believe we are trying to do the right thing. Happy to share ideas, happy to share case studies. But I think more than anything, it's just the ability to interact with you guys and teach you some of my life lessons and about what we're doing as a company, which motivates me, right? So Pawan, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me here, and I'd love to do this again. I'd love to chat with you guys and share ideas.
Thank you so much, Suhail. We really like the icon that you guys have on the App Store and Play Store now. You see with the mask. I think that's that tells how creative you guys are. And thank you so much for joining the session, guys. And guys, so we have the next webisode on Saturday. We have Mr. Digvijay Singh. He is the Chief Operating Officer for Indian Angel Network. So you guys all ask me about angel investments. How does it work? Do we need to have the financial literacy at a young age? So we are going to touch upon this topic next week. Mr. Digvijay Singh, who is having more than 300 plus investors under his firm, where they have invested in most of the startups that are there in India, which are successful startups. They have funded. Digvijay is going to talk about investments. He's going to talk about financial literacy. He's going to talk about how equity works, how to start your own venture. Last episode, we talked about, Ratnagara spoke about how to start your venture. Now Digvijay is going to talk about how to manage the funds, how to make a cash flow statements. And Digvijay is going to talk about financial literacy. Looking forward to see you all. And one more update from us is the second phase of our deadlines. I mean, for our Metamorphosis School of Entrepreneurship is closing tomorrow. And we're going to open up the phase 3 deadlines from July. We just have about 1 month to start our school. I'm looking forward to see you all in the schools. The applications are open for the second phase. Tomorrow will be the last date. And from July 1st onwards, we are going to open up phase 3 of admissions, but there will be only limited seats for phase 3. I'm looking forward to see you all in the school. Thank you so much, guys. Stay safe and have a great weekend ahead. And keep ideating, validating, and accelerating. See you all soon. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.